Oh, hello. You've unexpectedly rack-focused to me. Found me reading great literature in my home, as I often do with my candles and old books. I've invited you here for a lovely session of discussion about my favorite show, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and all the wonderful things in it. I decided it might be fun to bring some of the greatest minds behind the camera and in front of it here with me to talk about the show. They couldn't come, and so I have these people. And so we're going to talk amongst ourselves casually, as though there were no camera and none of us even noticed that we were being filmed. It's all going to be very spontaneous. Anything could happen. There may be partial nudity. Okay, seriously though, I do have many brilliant people here. In fact, why don't we all introduce ourselves? Or, better yet, let's every one of us introduce somebody else. I'd like to introduce Marty Noxon, who ran the show with me for many, many years. A brilliant woman. In fact, I do have many brilliant people here. Drew, introduce somebody.
I'd like to introduce Doug Petrie. He wrote Fool for Love. What more do you need?
Bravo. Well said. Well done. And as an introductee, I would like to introduce Mr. Nicholas Brendan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fine actor for the duration of the 7 seasons of our series.
I would like to introduce Emma Caulfield.
I would like to introduce the incomparable Danny Strong.
Danny Strong. Also,
I think he's, I actually always found Danny comparable.
you compared him to many things.
I compare him to lots of stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, then I might as well introduce Emmy nominee David Fury.
Yes.
Thanks, and I would like to introduce the lovely and talented Jane Espenson, the great Jane Espenson, who shared an office next to me for so many years.
And I would like to introduce the beautiful Charisma Carter.
And I think I was last one. You can call again. Oh, wait, no.
Back, because no one really
I
introduced
got
him.
introduced already.
Do you know who he is? Yeah, that's Drew Gotti over
which
there.
we know each other so well because we worked so much.
Because
Actually,
see, Drew came into the last
Zero.
year of Buffy when Charisma was already gone, and the last year of Angel when she just came back for one episode.
Did you direct?
I've missed you.
Did he direct?
I want to hear everybody's first Buffy experience. First experience of hearing about it, being a part of it, thinking you're a part of it, whatever it is. Starting over there with the man who was in there from the very beginning.
Wow, pilot presentation. My first experience with Buffy was auditioning for the role of Xander. And I don't know if you guys know this, but I didn't get it.
You would have been so great.
I know.
You're awesome. Right here, buddy. Right.
Oh.
I showed up. I showed up.
You blew it, and every day we'd come to work going,
You kept
man,
why?
I had the strong start.
And we called you not Xander for a long time.
That's true. That's true. That's true. People still call it to me on the street, but I'm cool with
Right
that.
here.
It's Nikki and Sarah. This is embarrassing.
Nick, I loved your work though, so it's cool. It's cool. Yeah, that was my very first experience, was auditioning for the role of Xander. And then I came back in and auditioned for some other roles for Joss and was cast as the role of student number 2.
Yeah.
Student number 3.
Didn't even have a name yet.
Didn't have a name, and that was my very first experience on the show.
I remember your audition particularly for the presentation because he had to be the guy in line who says, "Are you new here?" And she says, "Yes." And he says nothing. And literally, Danny was the only guy who said nothing. He just went, because he had no follow-up. It was hilarious. Everybody went, "Oh, okay." Every single other person added something and ruined the joke. Danny was the only one who got it. And
it worked out.
Years later, we...
What if I had said something? What would I be doing now, 7 years?
Shoveling. Or you might have gotten Xander.
Drinking.
If you said something.
Still here. But I loved you.
Oh, God.
My first experience with Buffy the Vampire Slayer was I was living in New York City and heard about this movie called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I couldn't get anyone to go with me because people were like, "It's called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's got like teenagers, but karate fights, but vampires." It's like, "Are you kidding? It's got teenagers and karate fights and vampires." And I went to a theater on 50th Street and kind of went like, "Wow, something's going on here," but they didn't quite nail it.
Well, I actually have a story about that. Small thing. We were sitting in the last place I ever came on set for the movie. We shot part of the movie here, upstairs, here at the Park Plaza Hotel, the training place where she worked with Donald Sutherland.
We should go up there and have a montage.
Actually,
A training montage.
actually, it's very intimidating to be around all of you when none of you works for me anymore. Because you just suddenly attack me.
I think the first thing I really remember was in shooting the pilot with you, directing, and I just remember your first day was breastfeeding on set. That's
Yes, the first AD, not my first date.
AD, did I say date? AD.
That was weird. Yeah, the first AD was breastfeeding.
Yeah, that was a very strong impression for me, like woman power kind of thing. But I just remember hearing a lot about Joss and just Toy Story was a really big thing, and it was, just my agents were like all over me, like, you gotta go in, and then I was auditioning for Buffy, which everybody after every interview always asks me about, by the way, like, aren't you sad that you're not Buffy? Like, no, Cordy's like the bitch. It's so fun. But like, you don't get it. But yeah, it was that was good times, and then having to prepare for that, like in 26, you're great, that was great. Can you go read for Cordy? And like, sure, okay. And I've like been on 3 auditions in my life, so that was a pretty great experience. Thanks. You're up.
Well, Doug told my story, actually, so I'm just going to... it was very similar, where I had heard about the movie, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and was anxious to see it, so anxious that I skipped work that day. I was working on a sitcom. Years later, we get a call from our agent saying they're developing Buffy the Vampire Slayer as a series, and do you want to take a meeting with Joss Whedon? And I went to meet with Joss. I guess, I don't know if the presentation had been shot yet, or if it was even earlier than that. I mean, it was really...
No, we'd shot the presentation.
Okay, and one of the first things I said to you meeting you was like, I really didn't like the movie. You were like, oh my God, yes, it was just a mess, didn't it? It didn't work. And I was like, oh, okay, you won me over right now. Because I went, okay, he's not gonna sit there and say this. And you started to explain what went wrong and what the series was gonna be. So I kind of went, I really get this. And I left kind of feeling excited. And I really thought this was great.
I didn't see the movie. And I remember driving down Highland, I think, and there was a big old billboard for the series, and it was Nikki and Sarah. You were kind of peering around. Yeah. And I thought,
looking around her hair.
God damn, the business is stupid. People are just freaking stupid, because that was a failed movie, and now it's going to be a failed TV show. That was what I thought. And then my agent called and said, you should really check out the show. And
you should stop being so angry, too.
and stop being so well.
That's a whole different phone
That's a
call.
whole different phone call. And I was, not enthusiastic, because I hadn't heard anything particularly good about the movie. So they sent the whole package, and she just said, seriously, no, just check it out, because I think you're gonna dig it. And it was like, I think I was in my apartment for the full 13 hours. From the very first episode. And then the moment, though, when it really happened for me completely was in that episode, Angel, where she and he are faced off, and she basically just bares her neck to him and kind of challenges him to do it. And I was like, this is the best show ever. Because for me, what happened was I realized that we were in a whole new world of female heroines. We were in a world where a girl who was also heroic could do stuff from her girlhood rather than the hero part when you least expected it, and then also do things from the heroic part when you least expected it. And I love that I didn't know what was going to happen, and that's so rare in television. It's so rare in movies. It just doesn't happen that often. And I also loved her vulnerability. It just was so romantic and epic, and that was the part of the show that always blew me away, was how you could speak to this part of my soul. So then I was totally, get me this job, and then I went and bought like a fake costume to wear to the job interview, because I thought that Joss would want someone who like wore
She was
jewelry.
San Diego chicken.
Yeah, and you didn't talk a lot, and you threw chocolate at me at one point. You were just like started throwing
It's a
stuff
sign
at
of
me.
affection in my culture. It was chocolate.
Yeah.
You thought I hated you, didn't you?
Yeah, I thought that you kind of hated me because you didn't talk a lot, and I said some pretty dumb stuff.
You guys are like grade schoolers. I didn't think you liked me. I did. I was throwing chocolate at you. Of course I liked you.
And, I dipped your hair in the inkwell.
Yeah,
Which is,
that's right.
practically like, and then it signed the contract with it.
Yeah, and then he gave me a wedgie, and
It was all over.
The contract itself was, do you like me? Yes, no, check one.
and then we got that little thing.
7 years.
We got that little,
Right,
paper
exactly.
thing. You're like, do you want to work on my TV show? So that's how it happens.
The whole thing. My first Buffy moment was actually Invisible Girl. Was the moment I realized, click, oh. And to take that back further, Invisible Girl, story of a girl who's so unremarkable that she gradually fades away. That to me was not only the perfect high school metaphor, but I actually have a picture of myself that I drew when I was 15, of myself looking at my hand disappearing, which is actually a scene from that show. So my first Buffy moment, I would say, would be that, when I drew that picture when I was 15. Because the whole point of the show throughout was everybody's going through this all the time. And it's the same thing that Buffy says to Jonathan in Earshot. It's that same motif that I kept coming back to. We're all suffering. And those of us who manage to make something of ourselves despite it are the heroes, and everybody else is either just a person or they fall into that other category, demon. And with that, there's two people on this show that I didn't hire. You and you. Because Greenwald hired you. I hadn't read you. He hired you to play Anya.
Right.
And I saw you and was like, oh my God. And then I needed you for the phlebotinum to get myself 2 willows, one of which was a vampire. And then I just kept needing you.
I know, and it's funny because the end of my last day, it was like the highlight because Greenwald had said, well, I'll see you again. We'll see you soon. And I just didn't think it was lip service. Like I actually really thought, like, no, they actually mean it, I think. I think I am coming back, and I didn't know when or how. And I think it was like a month later. It wasn't long. It was in the same
well, that was episode 9
season.
and it was episode 16. So.
Yeah, so it was a couple of months or something. And I was just so happy to be brought back. And then that's how it sort of was for season 3. It was like, we'll see you next time. Like, great. And then like, well, I can count on it because every time you say it, I'm actually coming back. And then up until that point, like nobody would hire me for comedy. Like I could not, every half hour went on, they're like, she's not funny. And I just have a tremendous amount of affinity for that period of time. And I was just very blessed.
Where's Nikki?
Never changed.
Had the one thing.
Yeah.
Just the one. Great. We liked it. It was no Danny Strong thing, but...
Because I always answered whenever she said, well, yeah, I'm the new girl. Oh, really? Well, welcome to Sunnydale. I'll give you a tour. Call me. Now, this guy actually talked a lot and it worked. Either you talk a lot or you say nothing at all.
All right, Mr. Brendan, you're first. Please.
My first audition, I distinctly remember my call back about 2 hours later, where I met you and Gail Berman, and I remember Gail was on the phone in the corner, and I said, yeah, whoever that is, tell them they owe me money, and I'm pissed, and then I spoke to you, I said, hey, Nicholas Xander Brendan, how you doing, la 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 la, and then I do my scene, and then you said, that guy that walked in, do it like him. And I'm like, okay. And I did it, and I left.
I will tell you the word that probably changed your life. Shawarma.
Yeah.
Shawarma, yeah. It's when we
Zeppa.
tested and there was something about Greek. It's all in Greek from Willow. And Nikki was just, we brought him in. We weren't sure. We had other people. It wasn't a slam dunk. It almost never is. Nikki just tore the place apart. It was just weird. I hadn't seen it before. And afterwards, he was just like, does anybody feel like shawarma? I feel like some shawarma. And I was just like, this guy speaks to me.
It's like meat. It's on a stick.
He just went, and that was it. I knew there was no other Xander.
Oh,
Shawarma.
God. But looking back on that.
If you'd said falafel, or you might
That's
not
not
be here.
saying. No, shawarma is,
it's gotta
falafel
be
and shawarma
shawarma.
are completely different. Falafel's not funny.
But if there's anybody who knows about funny words, it's Jane Espenson.
I had been working on sitcoms for 5 years, and and every sitcom that I was on ended the year I was on it. My friend Michelle called me and said, you know what's a good show? It's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I was very skeptical. But I tuned in, and the first episode that I saw was Ted. And it was so funny.
And it was genuinely funny in a way that I had been missing on sitcoms. I had this sense that maybe Buffy was my place, so I wrote an NYPD Blue spec, figuring a produced Ellen spec, or produced Ellen, and an NYPD Blue might equal a Buffy. And I sent those in as my sample.
We did actually combine them into an episode. An episode where she's a lesbian cop.
And I got called in for the meeting, and you complimented a joke that was in the NYPD Blue. And I felt like that maybe this will be my future, and it was.
When I said I didn't hire you, it was because Marty Noxon and David Greenwald had met with you, had read your stuff, and were fighting over you because David was running Angel. Marty was helping me run Buffy, or running Buffy
I found
with me.
first.
So yeah, well, and you got him because you won. And I met with you, thought he's really cool, but I hadn't read you when we hired you. That ball was in Marty's court, so she gets that cred.
Amazing that when Buffy started, I hadn't been born yet. I'm very young. I'm very young and good looking. No, but I was, I came to it as a fan. I was I was in college, and I think I took the journey that a lot of people had, which is, it was a show that a lot of people discounted for whatever reason. You didn't think it was great, and then it became this sort of underground hit. Like it became our show. Like it became this show that we didn't want you to like. We didn't want the establishment to enjoy, and I can remember like we would have these parties, and we would get together and watch it, and we didn't want anybody to know. And if there was a new person there that was watching, we didn't like that person,
Until there was a bloodletting. Let us have your blood.
I don't write for the man.
I've said this to you before, but it is. I mean, the show has a punk rock feel. There is a feel that it's yours, and it's a movement that doesn't belong to everybody. It just belongs to us. And you feel very possessive of it. And so I was that guy. I was that guy that. This part's embarrassing, but I worked in an office, and we had David Boreanaz cutouts in the office. We had why David Boreanaz? That's another story. But we were really passionate about it. We were those kind of creepy fans, and I lucked out, and I still look back at it, and I cannot believe I got to work with all of you people, except Charisma, who I didn't really get to work with, but. I got to work around you, which was phenomenal.
Yeah, you were kind of that. I mean, Drew was kind of like a little bit creepy. Like his boss at the time asked me to read a script, and it was a little bit like when we first started talking to Drew, and he met some of the other writers just in passing, because weren't you you were on a nearby lot?
Yes.
He'd get all kind of shaky and stuff, and kind of get all. And I kind of thought, oh God, now I have to read his spec, and it's gonna be bad, and he's tall and kind of good looking, and that's going to be a drag when I have to tell him new stuff.
Tall and kind of.
It's going to be kind of
Interesting.
tall.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's cool.
But I remember that. I remember thinking, oh, that feeling you get when you're going to read something that sucks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and then it didn't.
Thank God.
And you're hired, by the way.
And Drew didn't suck, and continued to almost not suck.
Wasn't he your first hire too, Marty?
He was my only hire, and believe me,
but at the time we were talking, I remember you like a little schoolgirl. I was walking, like, what? I'm like, I just had my first hire.
Look,
and
can we keep him?
And kind of attractive too.
We keep coming back to that. That's weird.
This is going well with us so far. I like this.
Well, the only reason it's significant is that I took a lot of heat when you showed up in the office, because everybody went, "Oh, Marty's first hire."
Like I didn't take any heat when you went from staff writer to executive producer in the space of 20 minutes, and I'm like, it's not my fault. She's a superhero. So let's just quickly do one more sort of obvious one, which would be favorite moment, either of your own.
On the show or in life in general?
Something. No. It's got to be about the show, okay. Nikki.
Why don't we go in size order, Drew?
No, my favorite moment, I guess it is You Never Forget Your First. And the very first thing I ever wrote was the very first episode. And watching Emma and Abraham do the Anya Olaf scene, I will never forget. That was the first thing I ever wrote. The two of them speaking Swedish. And it was one of those moments where you feel like you've stepped out of your own body, and you cannot believe that you're here watching this moment.
And we planned to dub that, and then your Swedish was so great.
What's great is we told them don't even learn the lines because we're gonna dub it, and you guys.
Now,
were so
Swedish
good.
people right now are laughing and going, so
Yeah, I don't know
great.
how good it was.
But it sounded amazing to us non-Swedes.
Olaf, are you scarred?
I remember at one point in the middle of a paragraph, you went up and you said to the script supervisor, where am I? And she just said, you're kidding, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I love to write Anya because, like me, she'll always say the wrong thing.
But it's not necessarily the wrong thing. I mean, what I loved about the character and what's true, I think, about both of you is you guys are also very honest. Like, you're very direct, and sometimes...
Which is usually the wrong thing to say.
Well, maybe so.
Oh my God, I'm reading one of your scripts that had an Anya/Emma line, and I go, wow, she's really a bitch. And you got very defensive. And you go, she's refreshingly candid.
Well, there it is. That's actually, it was kind of the mantle passed from Cordelia to Anya, was the person who says what everybody's thinking, but everyone's too polite to say. For me to pick a favorite Buffy moment is kind of a little bit ridiculous. I mean, it was my life 24/7. Other people went home, other people went to sleep. I read about them. I have to say one of them was the scene where Angel disses Buffy and pretends he hasn't gone evil, but he just doesn't care about her after he sleeps with her. In Innocence, I'd never written anything so mean, and I'd never written anybody so vulnerable as her. I remember because I was at Valentino by myself because I like to write in restaurants, and I was writing these words down and just looking at my pen like, I can't believe this is coming out of this. This is devastating. He's so horrible. I didn't know I had this in me. I mean, I knew I was kind of a schmo, but I just didn't know, and the power of it was extraordinary. And then when I tried to film it, it's supposed to take place on the lawn, and on the front lawn, and I was filming it with David and Sarah, and it was just dying. It was just, there was nothing. There was no energy, there was no heat, there was no vulnerability, there was nothing. And finally I was like, this is a bedroom scene, and I've written it on the front lawn in big woolly overcoats. And she has to be next to the bed that they slept in, and he has to have his shirt off. And what was I thinking? And so I shut down the crew. Well, we moved on to the next scene, which was Giles telling Buffy how much he supported her, and Buffy's all crying. And it worked great because Sarah was convinced that she had blown the scene, and David was convinced that he had blown the scene. I was like, no, guys, the scene is going to work. You guys are amazing. I've put it in the wrong place. Just wait. And we shot it in the bedroom, and then it was like all of that power came out. I was like, oh, there it is. And that was amazing.
You just left.
Yeah, I think I really wanted to stick around after that.
What?
You got a lot to learn about men, kiddo. Although I guess you proved that last night.
I think that maybe like one of the ultimate moments for me was after you had been away for a while. I think this was before I ruined season 6, or just about before I started to ruin season 6. And you had been like, I'm out of here. I'm gone. I'm getting my head in another game. And we heard this refrain. At one point, Josh had a laminated graph.
That's right, I did.
That was going to be the graph of his deceleration of involvement, and it was this. And he would show us the graph. He'd say,
I had it laminated. I had it in my wallet.
Yeah, and
Diego, my
he'd
assistant,
go, I'm
who's now a
less
writer.
involved now. See, this is me on the graph, and this is week 10, and in week 10, I'm here, not here. You see, so you can't keep making all these mistakes because I'm here, and I'm supposed to be here. And after a while, he just started, graph. graph. So it was at some point in the graph.
I failed the graph.
And you called me and you said, I'm not working on, well, I'm writing a musical episode of Buffy. And I said, oh, that's fantastic. Who's going to do the music? And he said, me. And I said, well, who's going to write the actual music part though? Because you're going to write the lyrics. He's like, no, I'm teaching myself how to play the piano and learn how to play instruments so that I can write the music. And this is what you did during your downtime. Yeah. And I remember the day you came with the CDs. I'll just never forget it.
Oh, with your voice singing, yeah, that's great.
And it was, first of all, do you remember I think we all went into my office and we had the DVD, and
You did. I remember because I was pacing outside your office.
Not that we don't have, and by the way, Josh would pace outside our offices when he gave us drafts. I mean, you get nervous every single time, which I think is a testimony to how much.
We read the script out loud. We all took parts and read it. We performed the script.
That's right.
And then when it came to the song, we'd
play
play the
the
song.
DVD.
We actually
That's
performed
right.
it.
That's
And when it was
right.
over, I went and I set fire to my office. There's just no point. I can't go on.
It was just one of those great moments because it was so wonderful, and I knew I was, again, part of something that, not even, in this case, completely tangentially, but I was just sort of blown away again. And then we actually got to be in it. And
That's
as much as I
these
protest,
two musical stars. Oh, you guys are so good.
but I mean, as much as I protest, it was, I really didn't want to be in it. I really wanted to be in it. And
David, you had no problem with that. You came up to me, you're like, I really want to be in it.
Yeah, it really is.
I kind of got embarrassed, oh no, I really. But the fact is, being in that little booth with the things on my ears and getting to sing for once in my life was like.
Oh, you were awesome.
What a voice! Oh my God.
And then we got to reprise it in Emma's episode.
That's right. But I
have to say, by the way, probably my favorite day of that was your guys' number. Was I'll Never Tell.
I just got chills
The
when you said
feeling
that.
of that number and of the dance and of that set and the 30s-ness of it.
Fall back into the couch.
Yeah, it was so old school, and everybody was just kind of lighter on their feet that day than any other.
Stinky cheeses.
Eat skeezy cheeses that you can't describe.
I think my first favorite moment for me was in pitching a story, the second story I pitched, a freelance script for Buffy, which became Helpless. But in the pitch, I had pitched that Giles gets fired. And my intent was, and then by the end of the episode, Giles gets rehired again. And I just remember hearing Greenwell going, Giles gets fired. That's it. He's fired. He's out of the Watchers Council. And I'm just going, wait a minute. I just got Giles fired. This is too much responsibility for me. I'm just a freelancer. And I went, dear God, I can have such a... because I came to the show, I was a fan, even though it was still early in its run, I was a fan of the show, and being able to it's such a major change in the development of the mythology of the show was enormous. The fact that I could have a hand in it, that I wasn't just...
Giles being fired led to Alexis Denisov. As Wesley.
I remember thinking, right when he came onto the show, I kind of felt this energy between me and Allison, about Alexis being kind of hot, so, which I've never said out loud. So, but I remember I was like,
So, which one of you won, by the way? Which one of you got him?
I think Allison got him.
I think
they're married now, and
oh, that's right.
That's right. I was at the
yeah, I had to kiss him, and this must have been it because because it was awful and giggling and laughing, and then we just had this really long piece of saliva between us, and it was just so disgusting. And it's we both cracked up laughing. It was just so funny and horrible all at the same time, and it was just a typical Buffy moment.
You guys had a huge piece of saliva
Before that.
in episode 10 of
We
season
did.
2.
See, what? In the closet?
Yeah.
You just
What is
get.
it?
Remember the
I guess
big
it's
kiss?
me. That's why I lost out.
I think they actually had to bring out scissors.
Oh God, I remember that. And
That's
then I remember Whose Line Is It Anyway? Part 1 and 2 with the worm guy and being down in the basement with you.
you guys
That was
totally.
an amazing time I had. I just felt so connected with you, and you were one of my favorite actors to work with because I really felt so safe and comfortable with you, and I felt like we meshed. We just meshed.
Which Red is just pure fire, because before we decided to get you guys together, your hatred of each other on the show was escalating and getting so powerful. And when we said, oh, they should get together, we looked back at what we'd done and went, oh my God, look at them. They have to kiss. They're just about to kill each other.
And my only other favorite part is putting Nick in a Speedo. Just because he never forgave. I will always be known to fans as the guy who put
It's funny.
Xander in a Speedo.
If somebody sent me that link, there's a link, and in the corner, there was some stuff written on it, and they wanted me to read it, and I'd never been on it before. And in the corner, it's me in the Speedo. It goes from face top, to crotch, like that, and then back up to face smiling, and right to crotch, and wow. And it's funny, I didn't realize that was you, and thank you.
Oh my. Now that, girls, is my kind of... Xander?
Season 7, we did a thing with, there was a big fight scene with James getting like literally thrown up through the ceiling. And he would go, can I do this? I was like, well, we have a stuntman right here. It's like, oh, let me just do it. I won't hurt myself. I won't hurt myself. And he just kept throwing himself into the wall. Like, okay, we got it. It's like, no, one more. And I was like, that smashing sound you hear isn't a sound effect. That's actually James Marsters' head going into the plaster. And he just did it again and again.
You're up for a proper fight.
What was the thing with Angel slipping when he walks in? Remember that?
That was from the part 1 of Graduation Day.
Yeah.
Season 3, episode 21. We'd done so many. That was on purpose. We'd done so many. Angel mysteriously appears next to Buffy, you know, Batman style, that I thought it'd be great if he just came in from the deep background, was clearly visible, and then slipped at the doorway so she could hear him. And that was his great entrance.
Stealthy.
And David did it beautifully. I don't think he was acting because David is the slippiest, the clumsiest man alive. I remember him kneeling in front of Giles and just tipping over. He was supposed to be torturing him in part 2 of Becoming, and he kneels down and just keeps going.
I'm falling.
He just keeps going, and then I tried to I was like, okay, get back up, we got to roll, let's go, and they both are just like. And they couldn't do it. Nobody could do it. We were all dying. And then he'd just fall over and fall over and fall over. He had some feet of clay. It was great.
I remember I had to cry. Oh, no, where I had to cry at the, where he leaves me at the altar, and whatever that demon was telling me that he took off, and he was giving me the whole spiel about why he's left, not marrying me or whatever, and I took an antihistamine. Not realized, just not thinking that I'm going to be completely dry, and I had to literally be weeping, and I had nothing. Nothing.
Sahara Desert over here.
It was
nothing.
awful. It was absolutely awful.
Did you have to use the eye drops?
That still didn't work, and then we broke for lunch. We went into lunch, we broke for lunch, and came back, and finally just God smiled on me, and I started crying, and then it was over. But I was.
Jane,
I had a behind-the-scenes story of my own that. When I was there, we were shooting my very first episode. We were shooting Band Candy, and the director said, "You want to be in the scene? You can be in the scene. I'll put you in the background of the shot." And so they put me in a cafeteria lady dress, and they put me in the scene, and I'm very visible in the background of Band Candy. And I was like, I'm writing for my favorite show, and I'm on my favorite show, and I was like skipping back up to my office, just as happy as a little bird. And somebody said, "Joss hates that. Joss would never have let you be in that shot. Don't let Joss know." And I'm like, "Oh, but I'm on the film." And to this day, this is
you're telling me now? Well,
You are fired, lady.
That's it. I'm canceling the show. Call UPN or wherever we're on right now and tell them no more. That is so funny that you kept that from me, as well you should have. So now I'm really mad.
Yes, perhaps that wasn't funny.
No, I think but now I think it's wonderfully charming, and can't wait to rewind my DVD to find you.
Oh, I'm in there.
Because I also know you. It's not, you're not that kind of person. You're not. It wouldn't be about look at me and it's a thing, and we cut to you and
I was really
like,
desperately miserable. I just couldn't wait for it to be over, because I was really afraid I was going to pass out and fall down in the background of the scene, because as soon as the camera was angled toward me, I just freaked out.
That was always a benchmark for me when you would laugh. Like when
during
you'd
a
laugh.
take?
No, I could sometimes where the monitor was, I could see you just peripherally, and you'd have the earphones on or whatever, and I would do something, and I would try to not, but sometimes you're just inevitable where the thing's set up, and you just can only ignore it so much, and I would just.
You zone out. It's great. It's like the
just like
when you contact guy doing this.
Yes,
nothing else is going on.
No,
nothing else, and you can see. That's all you need.
And when you would start to silently laugh, and I would see that in the corner of my eye, and I would try to not be excited that you were laughing. I'm like, oh.
Well, I think that's a theme in the entire, I think with all of us, is that your approval is so valuable. All of us want to know that we're living up to, we know how much the show means to you, we know how invested you are. It's just a trust or something that an integrity that you have, that you carry, and you know so specifically what you want that when you're moving on, you're like, yes, finally, okay, I got it. Or, I'm not
Jane does actually physically like to be patted on the head.
Yes, she
do
does.
enjoy a pat on the
That's your
head.
fetish?
That's it.
Is this a scene of the
A
secretary?
little
She would,
token of approval. I've always said I would write for praise alone. I don't need these big. Well, okay, I like the money, but I would write for praise alone.
No, but
Not anybody.
Money with praise.
Then
written on it.
sometimes if she did something bad, I'd have to take them back. Some reverse paths, which are just very debilitating. To her, but, you know,
I
what are you gonna
remember
do?
when you came to tell me that we were gonna do a spinoff, and that if I wanted to join, that that's what you and Greenwald were thinking about, and I thought I was getting fired because you did like to say that you're all fired.
Oh yeah, I fired people a lot.
That's how you know he would. That's how you know he wouldn't fire you, because he so enjoyed
Yeah,
saying
there's a
it.
lot of people I never.
It's when he didn't talk to you.
It was the ones when he didn't say you're fired. He went, he's really considering firing me. So.
And then it was exactly the opposite. You're hired. So.
Well, I remember when I wrote my first script, I handed it in, and I was kind of, then you have this awful hour and a half where you're sitting in your office chewing your fingernails, waiting, you have no perspective on it whatsoever. And you and Greenwald came into my office together. And it was like Elliot Ness and his goon. It's like, I'm gonna get the shit kicked out of me right now. And being just terrified. And, but you were very serious, and you said, I only have 2 seconds. I just read your script. Welcome to the family. And walked out. And
I want to ask something I've been dying to ask you for a while now, because since we've all moved on to other projects, I think all of us writers have learned that it's a miracle when it works. That the first season of any show is like a trial by fire, basically. I mean, and that everything has to come together. And so I wanted more to ask you, what was that first season like? Because I don't think actually none of us were there.
Nobody.
You saw a little of it. You saw all
Nikki,
of it.
obviously.
You saw all
The
of
actors.
it.
But none of the
There's been
writers
no
were
writers
part of
except for
it.
Greenwald survived.
You were not in 2 episodes.
And was it hard, or was it, because it
And
feels like
we
it was
felt the
always
loss.
the show. It was always charmed, but.
It was an interesting genesis. We had the idea. The WB. I had a couple champions. Suzanne Daniels just got it right away. And Jordan Levin, was behind her, and they really got it. Jamie Kilner bought it, but there were some weird battles. Like they tried to change the name. They said that you will ghettoize yourself, and what you were saying, you will ghettoize yourself with this title. Some people will never show up to this show with this title, and I said it doesn't.
Slayer,
they try. Yeah, they actually pitched it to their affiliates as Slayer, without telling me. Yeah. And then it came out in the trades that they pitched this thing to their affiliates, a little teaser of Slayer, and I'm like, it says Slayer and doesn't say Buffy the Vampire in front of it. They said, it's a typo. They told me that they got it wrong. It was a typo, and then I actually got the reel from the presentation with the title Slayer at the end in funny writing. Slayer. Yeah, so they fought me on that, but I just said, this is what it is. Buffy the Vampire Slayer it's Buffy, which is it's funny, it's vampire, which is scary, it's Slayer, which is action, and it's and you got to have a the. And then the next year, when it hit and the soap opera became so important, they tried to call it Buffy, and we're like, no, you contractually have to call it Buffy the Vampire Slayer. All of the elements have to be in it, and I think it to this day drives some people away, but if they can't open their mind to it. Yeah, they should ought to learn to, but that show wears itself on its sleeve. It's very sophomoric, and they got the idea. They did, and they were behind us. And luckily, because we were only picked up for mid-season, we made our 12 episodes without airing. So there wasn't any of that. Oh my God, the show opposite us has cute kids. Have cute kids. Oh my God, the show opposite us had a fire. Have a fire. Which I dealt with on other shows. They just let us do our thing, and our thing got increasingly weird. We made the pack. Where you went evil.
Great.
And we all looked at it, and that was one of those defining moments. Like
that really was.
We said, oh my God, we can do this? And then we did the puppet show, which was insane.
That first season, magical. I mean, really.
But the puppet show also had you guys doing
the Oedipus.
Oedipus, which over the end credits, which I laughed so hard.
O ruler of my country, Oedipus, you see our company around the altar, and I, the priest of Zeus.
Ha ha. They prophesied that I should kill my father, but he is dead and hidden deep in the soil. But surely I must fear my mother's bed.
Oh, Oedipus, Oedipus, unhappy Oedipus, that is all I can call you and all that I ever shall call you.
And we got a note from the network that said about the scene from Oedipus, we realize that it's Shakespeare, but does he have to talk about sleeping with his mother? See, the thing was.
Yeah, well, I think a network might make that say. Netlet or network. Yeah.
That was delightful. But the thing was, they also didn't want us to use the word virgin. Now, if you think about where the show went,
Spike on the balcony.
Spike on the balcony, episode 13 of season 6. But anyway, because they thought, well, it might be 8 o'clock. We might do it at 8 o'clock. And then they decided to put it on. So they didn't want us to mention virgin, even in a show that was basically saying, you should probably stay a virgin because the woman you're going to sleep with is a giant praying mantis.
Right.
Like, I mean, it was pretty reactionary politics if you think about that. But they were still very, they just didn't know. And then, a couple of years later, we were on at 8 o'clock. We moved to 8 o'clock, and we just got more and more controversial. Was there ever anything, first of all, that made anybody uncomfortable on that show? Or was it just like, okay, cool?
Uncomfortable in the sense of
subject matter.
No, I mean, but Hush, I mean, that whole thing, when I saw that, I mean, talk about realizing that a show's really working. Maybe I was a couple years behind, you know what I mean? Oh my God, this is good. And how were they floating like that? Was I even on set?
I'm gonna act harder.
But then also, but that concept of not being able to scream as your heart's being cut out.
Yeah, in fact, I still remember I saw an early cut where you really see the knife cutting through someone's chest as they're trying to scream. And it was the most horrifying thing that I still think that's in the episode. I know it was cut out, but I still carry that image in that like it was it disturbing or it didn't bother me. It was exactly what it needed to be, as horrifying as it can be. But I understand why you had to pull back on it. But I'll never forget how horrific it was.
The nightmare for me, because it was from my nightmares, when his POV when they're floating up to the bed. And they're just coming at you, and you're not doing anything about it.
Yeah,
that's where I just lose it.
I mean, and talk about the controversial 8 o'clock Hush.
That's right. Sarah does that gesture.
Yeah, and I had that thing.
you had Spike in the credits doing this.
Yes. Well,
obscene
when it came to
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare did this.
The Brits. Yeah. He was giving the peace sign to someone behind him. Yeah. Somebody deep background. We could get away with terrible slang that if you were in England would be completely shocking, but nobody in America knew about. I mean, we really said some scathing things, which is, but how about the speech that Faith in the guise of Buffy makes to Spike in Who Are You? Where she brags about her muscles. I'm not going to say any more. I found if it was British or terribly poetical, you could say whatever you wanted.
But then it did seem like when we moved to another weblet, that then it was kind of like no holds barred in terms of content.
It's
funny. We were also going to
because they wanted us so badly.
When we moved to UPN, I had a conversation
with it. It was the way they were dressed.
With Dean Valentine, who was at UPN then, and who was great. And everything went away from the WB and went to UPN. He really got the show. This was the network known for wrestling. I said, first thing on my mind, it's a musical. He's like, fabulous. Like, he got everything. And I said, now I don't know how you do things here, but we've always had a really good relationship, a real genuine back and forth with standards and practices. And he's like, oh, we don't have those. And I was like, yeah, that's just fine. Let's see. But it was the same thing. There was always a back and forth, a give and take, and we respected them. The only time I ever got any heat was the lesbian kiss. To give the WB credit, they called. They said, do we have to have that? Can we cut it? And I said, yes, we have to have it. And and they said, we really don't know if we can air it. And I said, I will pack up my office. It's the only time that I ever said that. And they said, okay. It's in. The thing about it that was really classy was not just that they had it, but that they didn't advertise it. Because the thing that always drove me crazy was that every lesbian kiss was advertised for the entire season and was always experimental. And then the girl would kiss and realize how much she liked to kiss men after having her lesbian kiss, and they would spend the entire season advertising it. And the WB, the idea of putting it in the body was A, to put it in a very natural place so that it wasn't a sweeps event, and B, the body was about physicality. in a very specific way, the way, you know, the body itself, but even the way Dawn said, I need to pee. Like, just, you wouldn't say that in an episode necessarily. It was just like I wanted to get to that thing, you know, the real intimacy of people's physicality, and so they had to kiss. And they didn't advertise it, they didn't mention it, they just let it happen. They didn't pull any juice for the ratings out of it, they didn't put it in the ads. They got that, you know, what it was, and that was, I thought, wicked classy.
As I recall, though, I think you asked them
Oh,
not
yeah,
to. I mean, I remember
it
that we
was-
were
it
very
was
much
a
like, we don't
request.
want it to be the, you know, the sweeps episode. We don't want it to be. And,
Yeah.
and
It's
we
amazing
talked
too how
about
it goes from we're not going to show it to then, you know, having them pull back of not okay, we'll do it on sweeps. You know what I mean? No, okay, fine, yeah.
Right.
I don't remember. Did they put it? They didn't put any kind of warning or anything.
They
before?
would put warnings before a lot of them.
Yeah, we
There was sort of, or not warnings, or
They would
warnings
just
or
say
ratings.
it's
not
meant for
appropriate
mature
for
audience,
most
something.
Yeah, right. For the love of God, change the channel.
Did we get a lot of? Did we get any?
It was,
we
they
never
would
got a
say,
lot
they
of-
sort of had a rating system, I'm not sure.
I remember, like,
It's,
with
We're
the
14.
relationship, did we ever get a lot of
Mature or
mail
something.
and stuff? I mean, they.
We got a lot more mail about
good stuff.
going bad, about, oh, are you just doing the angry lesbian when Willow went bad?
Yes, no, well, obviously the killing of Tara made a lot of people very angry, and, you know, the thing is, they'd say, well, it's a television cliche, and I didn't actually watch that much television as a kid, and I was like, I didn't know it was a television cliche. I thought bringing Dawn on, bringing a new young person on in the fifth season was incredibly original, and so not so much right am I, but I had no idea about any of that. I thought it was just, and I think we did a good job with it. But
Which
yeah.
is why it worked. I mean, had you known about it, it would have
Yeah.
gotten stale real fast.
But because I thought it was fresh.
Exactly, it stayed fresh.
It had a freshness.
Yeah.
To
Did
it.
you ever get political heat from any of the lesbian stuff?
The amazing thing was when she declared her love in episode 20. She said, you know, in New Moon Rising, she said, you know, Tara said, you have to be with the one you love. She said, I am. And they instantly on email, huge, oh my God, you people are terrible. You have done a terrible thing. I will never watch again because Willow has be a fag now. And, you know, it was just this slew of stuff. And all I could say was, you know, where were you during episode 16 when they did that spell that was the best sex scene we've ever shot? Where were you in episode 10 when they joined hands and suddenly had 10 times more power than they ever had? I mean, it was so clear they were in love from the moment they met that the fact that she said it causing this avalanche, I'm like, you people, it's not about your politics, it's about your lack of filmic knowledge. But I did go online and write a post that said, you know, that I may have, you know, misunderstood what people expect and what from characters they love, and I realize I'm talking about a lifestyle that is embraced by less than 10% of America, and it's not right to be shoving that down your throats. So from now on, Willow will no longer be a Jew.
That's right.
And then I got an angry letter from someone who said, you can't make her not Jewish anymore. Because there is no such thing as irony on the internet.
That's fantastic.
But it was a tempest in a teapot, because ultimately so many people came to us and said, you have no, I came out because of this, my parents talked to me because of this, my life was changed because of this, and that was not my intent. We just thought it was relevant and interesting and a college thing and would work. You know, it swayed us, I think, in ways that we're seldom swayed when we write, in that we realized we could never go back. We couldn't say, well, that was an experimentation and now I'm pretty,
Right,
you know,
it was one of the times that we actually had an agenda, because
Right.
we had talked a lot about we don't want to do it as a stunt. We don't want to, you know, we
Yeah.
have to honor the fact that people, you know, discover sexual preference and actually stick with it. Like,
Yeah.
not on most TV shows where they
Yeah.
do it for a couple episodes and then go, gosh, I just really like boys.
There was a thing, because Columbine happened
No, that was
right
a thing.
around
That was a thing. That was no Columbine. The Columbine. I remember, you know, when it happened, saying, "Jane, your episode's going to get pushed, for sure." And then my struggle was with the network. I did not disagree with pushing it. I was very sad because the way she helps your character. First of all, because I knew you had to push it, because just having an answer to something like that was facile to the point of offensiveness. So we had to push the episode, so when you gave the Class Protector Award speech, I was like, this will only really be appreciated on DVD because people will see, or in reruns, because people will see it in the right order where they'll understand what Buffy means to you particularly. But then they also pushed the season finale with the blowing up of the school because it came out that that had been part of the plan to blow up the school, and they had to cut the line, your line, we blew up the school, it's the best day ever, which of course, you know, it's any innocent, goofy fantasy line, but there was just no innocent, goofy about it. And that whole sequence, we had a real back and forth, real trouble with the network about how much we could show, and it got very truncated because of that. And I felt like, okay, we've pushed it, it's the middle of the summer, we've done everything you've asked, let us at least air the episode we made, and that got somewhat truncated, but that was really between them. When people saw the episodes, they got it. I don't think anybody thought this is irresponsible. The weird sort of paradox for me of the show has always been that it's an incredible responsibility and must be utterly irresponsible at all times, because we're talking about death, we're talking about sex, we're talking about the things we're actually interested in, afraid of, and drawn to. And if you just keep your politics at the forefront and make everything right and perfect and good, that's a speech, that's not a show, it's bad. You have to go to the dark place. The dark place is where the fairy tales live. And so you have to be incredibly responsible about what you're telling people, the role models you're giving them at the same time. You have to be incredibly irresponsible in what they do and what they experience and what they go through. And you have to teach kids that beer is foamy. I mean, I think there were some groups that said the show is terrible for families.
Bad for kids.
And then there were some groups saying this is the best family show. This show is all about values, which ultimately it was. It was all about morality, which is something I read about in the 4th season and decided to make the show have to do with.
My favorite thing about blowing up the school is I finally got to stake a vampire.
And you know why?
Because I was the only one that was nice to you on set that day.
That's right. It's true. I was getting a lot of aggro, and we were really behind, and Chrisma was being real sweet, and she just came up and said, "Can I stake a vampire?" And I was like, "Sweetie, you can." I knew we had enough money for exactly one staking because we had the snake and we had the explosion.
I can't believe you didn't stake one before that. All the time.
I was always the damsel in distress.
She was never nice to me.
Wow.
Before. No, it was just controversy was. We always expected it. We always ducked our heads. We waited for that or the critical backlash.
Yeah. But the thing about that was so great about the show is that just the level that it kind of rode at allowed us so much freedom in a way, because it always was just on the cusp of becoming more, more in the public eye. And in a way, the fact that didn't happen, that it stayed the show that other people didn't in fact want their friends to love, so then it wouldn't turn into that, Somehow that always served us well too, because I think it kept us feeling a little bit like outsiders, and it kept us,
Well, there are two ways to be honest about sexuality. You can either be under the radar or you can be friends. You can be so far above the radar that what are you going to do? What are you going to do to us? And we had the other thing, which was, we're entertaining hundreds of dozens of people.
Yeah, it kept me from thinking about the audience. I don't know about the rest of you, but it kept me from thinking about, because we weren't always, getting that. We had that kind of little praise, obviously great critical love, and we had our fan support, which was amazing.
It always felt like we were the kids in the garage. it felt like we were making the show for each other and for our friends, and so much so that I remember calling home to my mom and saying, because my mom was very sweet, and we'd have episodes where Spike's mom tells him, "Come on and have sex with me. All you've ever wanted was to get back inside me." We said that on the air. And,
she was a vampire.
She said it on the air, and then he killed her.
You know, we were a lot when they were a vampire, I tell you.
And I would have to call home and go, "Mom, don't tell your friends to watch this one. This isn't the one to spread the word about." Because we did it, for each other, and sometimes it wasn't for the larger audience.
I want to say one last thing about Buffy. It was very simple when I was talking about, I need this. I have this need to see this character who's strong. And, and God knows we broke her down and we put her through her paces and we did everything. But there was a moment, and it was several years in, and it amazed me. It hadn't occurred to me before. Somebody was looking at something we were doing, and they said, "That is so cool. This thing that Buffy did," And I just said, "Yeah, she's my hero." And I realized that it was true, that she was the first one I ever created. And that to me was, I just had this tiny little epiphany, and it's the tiny little ones that are the best. And I'm certainly not gonna look in the camera and say, thank you all for joining us in our impromptu discussion. Actually, it was pretty impromptu since we didn't know what we were talking about. And remember, everything you've seen here, all the good parts were cut out. Thank you, and good night. Okay, that's it. Let's leave.
Bye, guys.